Good evening and welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us for the next 30 minutes as we talk about the good, bad, and ugly of relationships. A huge shout out to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinemas, and Maxwell Construction. We are so thankful for these local businesses who have made this show possible. So whether you are listening live or online, Rock Solid Radio, helping to strengthen our community one family at a time on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3. Hey, this is Merrill Hutchinson for Rock Solid Radio. I want to thank you for tuning into another episode of Rock Solid Radio. And tonight we are going to talk about balance, right? Getting balance in our life.
Oh, yeah. In a previous episode, we talked about how so many people nowadays wear their busy badge, like a badge of honor.
Right, yeah. Just, ask how anybody's doing. Mm-hmm. Oh, we've been busy, really busy.
Like it somehow validates you or the work that you do. We believe that our physical health is directly tied into our emotional and our spiritual health.
Yeah. Well, we kind of set this up as tonight we're talking about three pillars, right? The three pillars. And for Rock Solid Families and our work that Linda and I do in our nonprofit organization, we focus on faith, family, and fitness. And so we have different ways of going about that, whether it's through coaching or setting up teaching programs or whatever. But those are really the three areas tonight that we want to talk about.
Right.
Faith, family, and fitness.
And we have incorporated all those in our nonprofit because we feel like they're all very closely tied together and one affects the other.
Yeah.
And so when one's out of balance, the others suffer. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, what that looks like, what's a healthy balance, how to get back into balance if you feel like things are kind of out of tune.
Well, typically it's so easy to get out of balance because typically we don't lose balance instantly.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you could lose balance instantly by a loss of a job. Instantly that sector of your life is blown apart. An accident, an injury of sort of an illness.
Your house burning
death.
down.
Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden you would definitely feel out of balance and thinking, okay, I have to put everything else aside and I need to get this part of my life back in sync.
Right.
But, and again, and we appreciate that, right? But that's not typically what happens when we all of a sudden see our life as if it's a car going off the roads. And so we talk about creating balance. And so let's talk about the three-legged stool.
Sure. Yeah. So think about it. What good is a stool if one leg is gone or broken? The stool can't hold any weight. The first time you try and sit on it, it kind of collapses. So you may not be as healthy or strong as you think you are. You may be killing it in the business world, and then it's killing your family.
At what expense?
Yeah.
Right.
Or your health.
Yeah.
And so we really want to talk. You mentioned, Hun, that unexpected crises. I kind of consider that to be like the pothole. You're driving along, your car's good, and then you hit a pothole, out of the blue.
Yeah.
And man, it just throws your car out of balance. Your wheels, your tires are literally just...
Yeah, you've got to get it fixed quickly because the car is just not drivable at that point.
Right. It was out of your control. And so that could be a cancer diagnosis, My mom, I remember very clearly where we were several years ago on vacation with our kids and getting the call that my mom was just diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about a pothole. That definitely throws things out of whack. And so what are you going to do to help get balance back in your life? Like you mentioned, a job loss. You went in one day thinking it's just a normal work day, and you get called into the boss's office and they said, we have to let you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And so nobody's going to pretend that you should just skip through the day and act like all is well. At that point, you're veering off path, and especially if you have other people you're responsible for and to. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, how can I help hold them up when I can't even hold myself up right now?
Right, yeah.
So,
or a sudden loss of a family member or a friend, you know, how that can just turn your world, flip your world upside down.
Yeah. But again, not to diminish those, but, you know, explain the slow fade.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know if you remember the movie years ago, hon, and I would recommend it to any couple, called Fireproof. And in the Fireproof movie, there was a song that Casting Crowns actually sang in the movie called Slow Fade. And it was written for the movie itself. And the whole idea that you don't really realize it, but slowly things are withering away, a slow fade. And it could be in your relationship. Maybe things at home aren't good. You and your wife are just kind of at each other's throat. And so you start staying at the office later.
Right, to avoid going home.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you go stop at the bar and you have another drink, you know, a drink before you go home because you got to numb yourself before you go. That's that slow fade. You know, or let's say that you killed it on your New Year's resolution and you lost 25 pounds.
Yeah, well, that hasn't happened in a long time.
Okay, but let's just pretend.
Let's say it did. Yeah. Okay.
And you lost 25 pounds back in January, but slowly you've gained it back and now you're at the highest weight you've had. That's a slow fade. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But it's just slowly deteriorating.
And I can think of the other way, too. Those are some of the fades down into not so good things. But if all of a sudden you start to hit the ball out of the park with maybe making money or having fun in a particular interest that you might have, that it's not that you're running away from something else, but you're running to this thing that feeds you, whether I make more money or hang out with these guys because I have so much fun with them, that I do it at the expense of something else.
I kind of call that scope creep. Now, I had never heard of scope creep.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. You better help me out here.
But at my last job...
It sounds creepy.
Well, you know, it was talking about the fact that if you don't have a very clear focus and direction, if it's not a well-defined plan, that you can very quickly get distracted. Now, I have ADD, so like I can get distracted easily.
I'm not even going to comment on this.
I know. So ladies, come on, help me out there. I'm sure there's been someone else that has been going to the laundry room to put laundry away, and then all of a sudden you see something on the kitchen floor and you have to go get the broom to sweep it. And then when you're sweeping the floor in the kitchen, then you see the dish out. And so you put the dish away. And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, I was going to the laundry room for laundry day.
I think we can all relate to that.
So,
but we just blame it on age or ADHD.
Yeah. So that's scope creep, where you lost your focus. You slowly drifted away from what you said was important in your marriage, in your family, with your health, your career. It gets out of balance.
Yes. Yeah.
And so sometimes, you know, I worked for 20 years in the church world, and so I would see people who would buy a boat. And that boat's not, you know, Satan doesn't live in the boat, but Satan uses the boat to pull you away from church. So every weekend you're boating or you're golfing. And that scope creep of, okay, I say God's important, I say family's important, but this new promotion at work has got me working every Saturday now, and now I can't see my boys play ball. I can't go to date night with my wife because of this scope creep.
Yeah. Well, you know, not that we put it in. We talked about the three-legged stool of faith, family, and fitness. But obviously underlying a whole lot of that is finance. And we talk about, you know, if all of a sudden our finances get out of whack, it affects our family. It can affect our faith. It can affect our fitness. It can affect all of these things because we start working like a slave, which, you know, we become slave to the lender of just trying to keep the boat afloat. And so when you mention the idea of buying a boat, the first thing I think of is, well, there goes another payment. There goes a payment that I'm going to have to work for all the time. So now it's going to take money away from spending time with family or doing other things that I say are important.
But you know what? And you know when you're out of balance, something doesn't feel right. I remember we had our first child, and I was teaching full time, and we were driving back and forth, and I had a baby and went back to work. And that second child just really threw me out of balance.
Yeah.
I felt like I was overwhelmed.
Well, that overwhelmed feeling, right? That's a huge indicator that the balance is getting off.
The kids, I was getting them up way too early. I remember our second oldest crying all the way up Route 1, trying to get him to school and thinking, why am I doing this? I had to feed him a whole pack of crackers all the way to get him to...
I think a nickname came out of that.
Yeah, I know. But, it's one of those things where that, for me, made me realize that I was out of balance.
Yeah. Well, so you recognized it.
Right.
And that's when we talk about being out of balance, so often it can be such a slow fade, as you talked about before, that we can be so far out, but it was so small, so incremental, that it's not until we're out in the middle of the desert or we're in this disastrous kind of place that we go, oh my gosh, how did I get here?
And sometimes you don't think you have a choice. For instance, you're working doubles to try to make the rent.
Well, we lied to ourselves, didn't we, on that?
Yeah. That I had to work.
Yeah. No, we don't have a choice, right? We've got house payments, we've got car payments, and wow, that was that whole short-sightedness of living in the way of the world, rather than saying, and we were early in our Christian walk there of saying, you know what, how are we really called to live?
Right.
And we woke up and started to challenge each other.
Yeah.
And I remember having that conversation of, well, hon, if we really, and again, I felt the same way you did about things being out of balance, if we really feel like this family is that important,
right,
and we need more stability in our home, then we need to make some changes.
Yeah.
And I remember that night you were very upset, and we prayed about the idea of you not working.
Yeah.
And I remember when we actually did the budget.
Oh.
We did the budget to see if it would work, and we actually decided that I should actually go out and get 2 more jobs. Because we thought, this is not working.
Yeah.
But that was, we went to bed that night, and I woke up the next morning, and I remember saying, this is a faith issue. And if we truly believe that God's going to carry us, then it's time for one of us to give up our job.
Yep. And God provided, because I did the books, and we were going to be in the red, but I started babysitting.
Yes.
Had some little ones that would come, which the kids loved. They felt like it was instant friends every day.
Yep.
And that paid the bills, and that kept us afloat. And I was able to stay home. There was stability. I felt balanced, and for 4 years, just stayed, which I've said before, I feel like is the hardest job somebody can do.
Yeah.
Is to stay home. And
so we kind of righted that ship, but I think it's important to remember that just because you find balance doesn't mean balance maintains itself, because we have since found ourselves drifting back off. We've had to make life changes. And so we talk about that idea of, well, how do you regain balance? What do you do? And so let's talk a little bit about how we did that. We actually kind of just shared a little story, but let's break that down so that our listeners can go, okay, I need to kind of get a grip.
Sure.
And let's do a little bit of step by step and see what we can do to help.
Sure. Yeah. So I believe, and this is, by the way, if you would Google stages of change, you get to that contemplative stage where you realize, okay, there's an awareness, like something's out of balance.
You're right.
Something needs to change. And so nothing's going to happen until you get to that place where you're like, okay, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Notice your symptoms, right?
Yeah,
your stress,
to
your
recognize
anger,
being out of balance. Yeah.
Your symptoms are things that your body and your mind are feeling. And so give them some credit, value them. Don't quit putting them back in the corner like, I can suck this up. I can move through this.
So for me, it was being short with the kids, being short with you.
And I was going to say, maybe with me a little bit.
So that definitely was a red flag. Like something needed to change. And it was because I felt so overwhelmed. And ladies, can I just speak to the moms out there, especially working moms? Man, if you're overwhelmed, if you feel like you have nothing more to give, it's time to reevaluate really how to put your life back in balance. And I know the first things that go for me is personal wellness, self-care. So I stop working out. If something's got to give time-wise, I stop working out. And that's not good. My quiet time with the Lord, which I need more than anything, is the first thing to go, the second or first thing to go when I am out of balance. And those are two things that I know I need. It's that leg of the stool that I've got to have.
Yeah, yeah. So the first step we just talked about was recognizing that you are out of balance by looking at the symptoms, right, the stresses. The next thing is, of calling it what it is. You've got to determine what's broken. Is put a name on it. I'm working too many hours. I'm having a stressful relationship with this person. I'm allowing people to overrun me. You've got to identify it.
Our spending is out of control.
Yeah, our spending's out of control. You're drinking too much, right? You're eating too much. You've got to call it what it is. If you don't call it what it is, you will continue to just wander around and hope that things get better. So you've got to put a name on it.
Right. And then you got to kind of look back and say, okay, where did I fall? Where did the fade start? How did the creep happen?
Yeah, was it an immediate or was it a fade?
Right. For instance, I will never forget, we had a good friend who one afternoon she got a phone call that her house had burned to the ground.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's a pothole. Talk about throwing your life out of balance.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that this woman, this family, had the stool so sturdy that even losing everything did not throw them out of balance.
Yeah.
I still remember being more upset than she was. And she's like, Linda, it's just stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, can I get that? Because whatever you're drinking, I need to drink because it's something that I need to help with.
Yeah. And so that's the immediate one, and she did a fantastic job with that. But losing our way in a slow path, right? We went hiking a couple weeks ago back down at the Red River Gorge, and I was explaining.
You have to bring that up.
Yeah, well, we went down and we. I was telling our kids how I used to backpack down there, and how we would just go off the beaten path. I mean, we would kind of make our own trail, and how we used. Fluorescent ribbons so that we would stay on path because that's not a place that you want to get lost in, right?
No.
And so we would tie off these ribbons and just keep on progressing out through the woods until we got to where we wanted to be. And then when we were finished there, we knew how to walk back.
Okay, so I just got to tell you this quick story because...
Wait, where you go? Oh, you are not going.
No, I'm not going to go down that road. But... we've been hiking Red River Gorge. If you guys have never been down the Natural Bridge, it is one of the most beautiful places in the fall. And Red River Gorge has great hiking and stuff. And we've been hiking there since we've been dating. So 30-something years, 4 years or whatever. And I'm just going to tell you that I think those hills have gotten steeper and those trails have gotten longer because they're starting to kick my butt.
Yeah, I don't want to be mean, but you were sucking wind.
Our little guys were running ahead of us, and I'm thinking, hang on, let me.
So maybe we need to get some fitness back.
Oh my gosh, I will admit, this summer it's kind of fallen by the wayside.
So getting back to that idea of understanding which area is broken. And then retracing footsteps. If you don't do that, if you went off path and you don't recognize where you went off path or the factors that take you off path, then it's a guarantee you're going to be off path faster or sooner than you want to be.
And it might be a friend.
Yeah, very well.
That is kind of
an influence.
That you got to kind of maybe cut that person out of your life because they're the ones that are asking you, hey, let's go get a drink after work. Hey, come with me and meet this person. And all of a sudden there's this slow fade in your marriage. You might have to wake up and say, okay, this friend is taking me down a path that I got to get away from.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that before. If you're hanging around friends that are telling you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear, you might want to
get some new friends.
Yeah, because they need to challenge you. So once we've retraced those footsteps, then it's time, and this is the hard part, then it's time to get education, to seek counsel.
Ask for help.
Yeah. And again, if it's something that doesn't, like if you already know the answer, which in many cases when we get off path, we know the answer. We know what we need to do. We've already been educated. We know what we need to do. But if we don't know, then seek help.
Yeah.
There's coaches, there's mentors, there's counselors, there's people around that probably hold the keys, the yellow ribbons, so to speak, to get you back onto the path.
And it might be a support group. we've got a lot of people that we've worked with that have experienced divorce, and the real pain of that, and we're going to be, you actually write about that recently about parenting after divorce, and just the emotion of that. You may need to have some people around you that have been there. I think of my friends Dennis and Barb, who experienced divorce in their own life, and then they turned it around, and they actually now counsel couples or counsel folks that have gone through divorce,
well,
through
they've
divorce
seen
care.
what it is to go off path.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so who would know better than how to get you back on path?
And so, find a support group. Maybe addiction is the thing, maybe you have anger issues. To find somebody that can come alongside you and help you regain that balance is huge.
So this is all good stuff we talk about as we go through this path. But then you actually have to you have to put some order to it if you're going to be effective in the change. So you've got to create a plan. Right. Now, let's just back up for a second, because sometimes when we think about creating a plan, especially I know a lot of men that I work with, the idea of sitting down and writing down a plan and blah, 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 it's maybe not a strength, right, that they have. Plans don't have to be complicated.
No.
They really don't. They have to be solid.
Right.
They have to be concrete.
Or you get that the scope creep I was talking about. If you don't have a formulated plan and a direction that, we talked about our very first show, the firm foundation. And if you don't have a firm foundation, then it's going to be a pretty shaky ground.
Right. Yeah.
So get that firm foundation and then build on that.
Yeah. So let's just give an example of that. Like, the fitness one. Everybody kind of has some understanding of fitness. So the idea of fitness, I can go and get personal training. I can get coaches. And again, listen, I do that for a living. So you're more than welcome to walk through my doors. But it could be as simple as, my plan is I'm going to walk 4 days a week for 30 minutes each.
Right.
You know what? That is simple.
I'm buying a Fitbit and I'm doing 10,000 steps every day.
Yeah.
We did that in our office.
I mean, it's that simple. So I don't, you've heard me talk before. I'm a simple mind. I like to keep my plans simple, because the more complicated they get, the more chance that I'm going to blow it. All right. And so get a plan. If you need something more detailed, I know people who talk about plans that they're very detail oriented. And if that's how your brain works, then good for you. Go for it. But you've got to get a plan.
Right.
Right.
And then eventually, you got to stop talking about it, and you got to start doing it.
Yeah,
it's time to put the plan into action. It's time to go to work.
Yeah.
And so execution of any plan is the most difficult part of the process, but that's what determines if you're going to find success or not.
Yeah, and this is, in our last show, we talked about mentors and mentees, right? And so this is sometimes where you do need the accountability person, right? And so it's time to go to work. It's time to have ways to, I'm going to start that walking. I'm going to start doing different things. And I need a way to check to see if I'm actually doing what I said I was going to do, if I'm actually staying on path. It may be very simple. If I'm going to use the scale, the weight scale as my accountability coach, he doesn't lie, so I just stay off of him, right? But,
well, you can we have a scale that lies.
Yeah, you can lean on it certain ways, and you can get just about any number you want out of that thing.
Yeah.
But so it's time to go to work, and it's time to then set up some parameters that help us do well at work.
For instance, if quitting smoking is what you want to do, tell somebody, I'm going to quit smoking, and then have them hold you accountable. Tell them to ask you every week. Or maybe it's that you need to get home at a decent hour from work. So ask your coworker to hold you accountable, that if you are still there at 6:30, to look at you and say, go home. So you need to get some help and some support to put in place what you want to do.
Yeah. Hey, let's jump into a challenge.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm sure that everyone in Eagle Country just loves our
challenges. Hey,
yeah.
You know what? Let's make it better. What can we do to make this world better by starting with ourselves?
Yeah.
And so, that's the hardest part of any of this is accepting that you got work to do. You know, you're not perfect. And so that's why these challenges are in here. And we know that not everybody's going to perfectly follow every challenge, but we certainly hope that we
give you something to think about.
Interest a little bit and think about what it is that you need to do to be better with the gifts you've been given.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know if you like this name of this challenge, Linda.
What?
So I'm going to call this first the triple F assessment.
Ooh,
that sounds like a bad word.
That doesn't sound good.
This is a triple F assessment. So the very first
Yikes.
thing that we're really talking about doing this week, I want to challenge you guys, and that is I want you to sit back and assess where you are in faith, family, and fitness. I mean, this is
okay. Those are the 3 Fs. Ooh,
yeah. No,
Yikes.
yeah. Where'd you think I was going with that?
Well, our sponsors, I don't think would appreciate.
Come on, get back online here.
Yeah.
So, faith, family, and fitness. Take a minute and just look in the windows of each one of those. You know how I know that for me, there's always an area that I need to do better at.
Right.
And you know, I'm trying to keep it on the path, but
right.
you know, sometimes family stuff is really tough for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes life busyness, it makes my faith wander, or at least the habits.
Yeah. You know, honey, working in ministry for 20 years in a church, I would be at the store and I would run into someone that I haven't seen forever. And sometimes they would say, oh, you've just been really busy. I mean, that's their excuse. And sometimes they would literally run from me because it was like this guilt trip by seeing me in the store. And I feel so bad. But I would see that as a slow fade. Like they just started to let life kind of get in the way.
You're going to bring up something.
Well, I'm just going to say I've missed
guilty.
You, or how have you been?
But in their mind, they're going to think, oh, no, there's Linda.
Right.
She's going to ask me how.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the triple F assessment, right? So take a look at those 3 areas of your life, okay? Now, once you've done that, you know, whenever I work with anybody and we look at life as being like, oh, my life's falling apart, if you really want to overwhelm them, tell them to fix it all at one time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just becomes crazy. So I'm going to ask you to focus on one of those. You know, find the one that you feel like, you know, this is the one that's just most out of whack for me right now.
Right. And let's say fitness, we're not just talking about going to a gym.
Yeah.
We're talking about your emotional health. We're talking about your physical health, you know, your high blood pressure. It could be, you know, your anxiety. So we're not just talking about going to a gym and getting buff here.
Right. Well, and let's go family. Family is not just your immediate family; it's your relationships.
Right.
If your relationships, even outside of your home, you know, I keep struggling with people at work or whatever. Those are. It's family is what teaches us
your work
about
family, your church family. Yeah.
And so, that's the other areas that we need to look at. But identify one of those areas, okay, and then let's run them through the steps that we just talked about a little bit ago about how to make it better, right? Recognizing what's out of balance, determining then which area is broken, okay? Retrace the footsteps. Where did I get off path? Seek counsel then and advice and education. It might be as much as reading a book, or it might be actually asking for counseling.
Or support group.
Support groups, right? Create the action plan. And then it's time to go to work. And so start knocking those off. And I think that you're going to find that those are just ways that your path becomes straighter.
Yeah. So we're praying that God uses tonight's episode to really prompt a response. You know, we're hoping Satan would love to see you out of balance. He loves it when you're overwhelmed. But I love this verse out of John 10:10, and I want to leave you with this tonight as we close. You know, John 10:10 says, the thief's purpose, which is Satan, is to steal, kill, and destroy. The thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. But my purpose, the Lord says, is to give them a rich and satisfying life. Or in another translation, it says to give them life and life to the full.
Yeah.
And so we want that for you. And that only happens if you stay in balance. So we are just so thankful that you tuned in tonight for another episode of Rock Solid. We do want to thank our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Buffalo Wings and Rings and La Rosa's and Greendale Cinema, for their support.
Very good. You remembered them all.
Exactly.
I usually mix them up somewhere.
Yeah, but we want to thank you for tuning in. And for Merrill and I, thank you for another episode of Rock Solid Radio.
All right. Thank you much. Good night.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard this evening, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinema, and Maxwell Construction. If you have questions you'd like answered on air or want to chime in on something you heard this evening, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next Sunday evening at 7:30 for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merle and I, thanks for tuning in on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.